What is going on, everybody? It is me again. It's HorrorFan34, and welcome to another video, and welcome to another review for the 31 Days of Horror Challenge in October. Now we are on day 25 of the challenge, and we are still in the 90s here. I think we're on the same year as Graveyard Shift, actually, 1990. Yeah, 1990, yep. And I figured this would be another good one to talk about, because it is one of the more underrated, probably one of the most underrated horror sequels. I reviewed the first film of this already before when I did like another 31 Days of Horror marathon, probably like, I want to say it was maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I can't remember when I reviewed it, but I know I've been doing the 31 Days of Horror the past couple years. I reviewed the first film of this, either the first time I did this or the second time I did this reviews. But I reviewed it before for this kind of marathon already, and I haven't talked about any of the other ones, and the other ones are not really worth mentioning other than probably this one. So that's why I'm going to review this one, and of course that review is going to be on The Exorcist 3. Yep, The Exorcist 3. Now, of course, this is the reversible artwork that was the Scream Factory. Of course, I didn't have the slipcover, but it includes both cuts of the movie. The theatrical, which is there, and the director's cut, which is called Legion. Now, pretty interesting backstory too about this film as well, but I'll get into that. I'll get into that at the very end. But basically, it takes place like 15 years or so after the events of the first film, and then you have this police lieutenant played by George C. Scott, who for many years has been haunted by the death of his best friend, Father Karras, who was, of course, Jason Miller in the original film. And then, there's, this child there's a boy who's found decapitated by this killer, and it's been known that, the markings of this boy who was decapitated is marked probably by the Gemini killer. And the Gemini killer was a guy who was executed in the electric chair 15 years ago. But then there was a psychopath running around claiming himself to be the Gemini killer. And, George C. Scott is trying to get to the bottom of this and things like that. Brad Dourif plays the Gemini killer who appears before George C. Scott. Actually, right here, there's Brad Dourif there. And Jason Miller is actually in this as well, having connections to the first one as Patient X. I thought it was a really cool thing they did where they kind of mixed in Jason Miller and Brad Dourif together in the same scenes. Like when one shot's on George C. Scott, the next shot you see Jason Miller talking to him. But when George C. Scott mentions that the Gemini is dead, it cuts to Brad Dourif sitting in that spot as the Gemini killer. And what I love about The Exorcist 3, first off, I thought it was such a cool story that it does have connections to the first movie because of the Jason Miller character. And I really like the cast in this. George C. Scott, of course, from the original Changeling, excellent ghost story movie. I miss George C. Scott. May he rest in peace. It was cool to see Jason Miller in this, but I'll get into that later when I talk about the behind-the-scenes stuff, on the production of the movie. But easily for me, Brad Dourif steals the show as the Gemini killer. The way he's screaming and he's yelling, "No, I'm not! I am alive!" He's screaming like that because the guy, George C. Scott, says the Gemini's dead, and then Brad Dourif gives an excellent performance as the Gemini killer. You also have Scott Wilson, Nicole Williamson, Ed Flanders. So a really good cast of people. And the whole exorcism scene at the very end is so damn cool. Love the musical score they use with the bells and whistles and things like that. I love that. And I thought the musical score was really, really well done as well by Barry D. Vorzon. I thought he did an excellent job on the theatrical score for this movie, because I love the whole exorcism scene with the bells and whistles and just over-the-top goodness. Love that part. And it was cool, and the cast, like I said, does a great job in here. Brad Dourif, Jason Miller, George C. Scott. You even have like a weird dream sequence where you see Patrick Ewing and Sam Jackson in like a train station. So it's kind of a weird scene, but it's a kind of a cool scene at the same time. And when it does have gore, there is gore in here. It's got some nice bloody images. There's even a point where the statue has the Joker's face on it from the Tim Burton Batman. Like there's this really cool shot with the statue in this church, and it has the Joker's face on the statue's face. It's the Joker's, from Batman Tim Burton's Jack Nicholson's Joker's face, which is pretty interesting. And this is just an overall just excellent underrated horror sequel that doesn't get brought up that much. And I think it's really worth your time if you like this cast of actors. And it's pretty insane that I'm reviewing a lot of Brad Dourif stuff, because you figure for this month of October I reviewed Graveyard Shift, which he was in, Child's Play, which was he was in here, and Body Parts. Like Brad Dourif was in a ton of stuff like throughout the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of horror stuff. So it's pretty insane that I've been reviewing quite a bit of Brad Dourif stuff that he's in, or is this like the star of. But The Exorcist 3, very solid, underrated sequel. Like I said, George C. Scott as Lieutenant Kinderman does a good job. I love the whole setting in the church and like the prison area. I love the whole setting. It's dark, it's grisly, and it includes my favorite jump scare of all time is in this movie. My favorite jump scare ever. And if you've seen the film, you know what I mean. It's like that long shot of the hallway with all the nurses walking around, and then out of nowhere, this headless nun-looking thing comes out of nowhere and grabs the nurse. It kind of like zooms in real quick because you don't expect it because it's a faraway shot. And then and then it like zooms in. Very cool looking, shot right there. A great jump scare. That's how you do a jump scare the right way. A lot of current day horror films take notes from this of how to do jump scares pretty good, because that's a good jump scare. Now I was gonna get onto the production of the movie at the very end here. Pretty much, this is of course based on the novel Legion by William Peter Blatty. It was based on his book, who wrote the original Exorcist, and was a writer on the first movie. He made the film like his novel Legion. But then the studio decided, well, do you think you can have an exorcism scene in this? The ending to your director's cut is really eh. So then they had to film a different ending. And then because they had to film the exorcism scene, Brad Dourif had to redo his entire performance all over again. Because in the original cut of the Legion cut, Brad Dourif is playing the Father Karras role, which was, the Jason Miller character from the first one. But because around that time, Jason Miller was a big time alcoholic, and he had trouble memorizing lines, so they figured he couldn't do it. But they were able to get him in somehow, because the studio wanted Jason Miller to have a role in this, to have a connection to the first movie. So then when they had to film the exorcism scene, so like in the director's cut, Legion, which is this one, Brad Dourif's performance in it is totally different, because he's playing Father Karras. He's not playing the Gemini killer like he does in the theatrical cut. In the theatrical cut, he's playing the Gemini killer. He's yelling and screaming at certain points, but in the Legion cut, he's very laid back and soft-spoken, because he's playing the Father Karras role from the first movie. Honestly, out of both cuts, I think Brad Dourif... I like Brad Dourif's performance better as the Gemini killer when he's screaming and all that stuff. I thought it was more aggressive. It was more of a, energetic performance, like more of a boisterous performance, and I like that Brad Dourif a lot better. I mean, no disrespect to Brad Dourif in the director's cut, because they're two different kind of characters, but I think Brad Dourif did a better job, at least to me, in the theatrical cut. And of course, because they had to film the exorcism scene, they had to build a new set and everything with the prison walls and all that stuff. So that's why Brad Dourif had to redo all of his dialogue over again, because Jason Miller was able to be a part of it and be that Father Karras role, or the Patient X character, and then Brad Dourif had to play the Gemini killer in the theatrical cut. So that's why you see both Jason Miller and Brad Dourif together in the theatrical cut, while Jason Miller is nowhere to be found in the director's cut, Legion. So it's a pretty interesting little backstory production there. And on top of that, too, I know the film didn't do the best when it came out because, I mean, it wasn't a flop or anything, but because The Exorcist 2 was such a piece of dog shit, they were like, really? You made another one? But, you know, this one completely ignores part 2. It kind of picks up right where the first one left off at, which is nice. But The Exorcist 3, underrated sequel. So that's pretty much it for my review for The Exorcist 3. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.